This is our Lectric Xpedition, which we've had for about 2 weeks now, and we've really liked it, except for this metallic rattle that you can hear. So I'm going to try to figure out what's causing that and fix it today. So I'm going to kind of spoil the end of the video, but I was able to get the rattle fixed and thought it'd be useful to just show all the tools I ended up using here at the beginning. Basically, we just ended up moving some electrical components, so you don't really need a whole lot. Some side cutters to just snip off the existing zip ties or cable ties so you can move cables around. And then you'll need a handful of cable ties to tie stuff back up once you relocate things. Pliers can be helpful for if you want to really tighten up a zip tie. It can be useful to kind of pull on it with some pliers. Some tape and a marker just there's some electrical connectors you have to disconnect. So I think it's a good idea to label all those, anything you disconnect, label them so you can get stuff plugged back in the right spot. And then one of the little electrical boxes will end up moving. So I ended up using a little 3D printed mount to attach it to a new spot on the bike. Obviously, if you have a 3D printer or know someone who does, I'll include the file in the description. If you don't, though, a couple pieces of just foam also work. So this is like some 1/8 inch neoprene adhesive backed foam. Maybe I'll try to link to some of this as well, but some foam works fine as well. I just kind of ended up liking the look of the 3D printed part better. And that's all you end up needing. So it turns out that the rattle is actually coming from inside the down tube. Down here at the bottom, there's a little electrical component, a little metal box with 3 wires coming out of it that kind of sits down here in the tube. And then there's also a cable that comes in here through the bottom, runs through the tube, and then comes out here at the top. And all those things inside the tube are kind of, there's nothing constraining them inside the tube, so they can kind of bounce around, and when they hit the sidewall of the tube, they make that rattling noise. There's a post on Reddit by the user Wisconsin Trapper that said he contacted their customer service, and they said the Lectric said the same thing, that there's a battery isolator, which is that little component within the frame that's rattling. Their solution to this is or at least the solution he provided that they provided to him was to like tension the cables a little bit more, pull on them, and put another zip tie in place to kind of hold them tight and prevent them from rattling, which I tried and couldn't make work. But that's potentially a solution. I think what I'm going to try is just removing everything from inside that frame tube. Because currently there's a couple cables and lines that already run outside the frame. It's kind of a weird setup where 2 run outside and 1 runs inside. I'm not sure why they split and then come back together. So I think that cable that's currently running inside the frame can just run outside the frame. There's some nice little cable stays here, so you can just attach it to those. And then I haven't figured this out yet, but I think this little component can probably just be relocated back here. And then there'd be nothing inside the frame to rattle around. So anyway, that's what I'm going to try to do. So this is that little electrical box that sits inside the frame. To get this out, you just kind of start snipping off the little zip ties that are down here to get some slack in the cables. And then with the way my cables were run, I actually had to disconnect some of these cables to get it out. These are pretty easy. These connections, just kind of pull them to separate them. And you can see it's probably a good idea to mark these as you remove them, just A, B, or whatever, so that you can plug them back in the right spot. But that's that little box out of the frame. There's a little square hole here in the bottom that is where everything is run. So that's the box out. With this electrical box out, removing the cable from inside the frame is pretty straightforward. This connector is just down here at the bottom, so you disconnect those. and then thread the frame, the tube out through this little hole in the frame and just pull it out. Okay, so it's a little later in the afternoon now, and I've relocated all the electronic components where I wanted to. The front here doesn't really look that much different because, like I said, there are already 2 cables running along the bottom here, so now the third one's running with them. And I actually haven't even put them inside the little cable guard thing, so it's just running alongside them right now. But that more or less looks the same as it did before. So the battery isolator that was previously kind of bouncing around in this part of the frame, I've relocated back here. In my case, I'm using a little 3D printed mount that I'll include the file for in the description, but if you don't have a 3D printer, or don't have access to one, I've also got, this can also just be installed with a couple pieces of foam on the frame, and that also works fine. So I'll show some videos of attaching it with either method. You can see I've just got the single battery, but I've flipped the battery over, and the other battery sits pretty high, so you've got kind of plenty of clearance even if you have the 2 battery version. Right, out riding the bike, and that has definitely fixed those changes definitely fixed the metallic rattle. That's kind of all gone. So yeah, kind of combined with the suspension seat posts I just added, it really gives the impression now that the bike's much smoother, so it's really pretty nice to ride now. The little bit of rattling you might be able to hear is the plastic cargo bin I've got on the back right now, so I guess that'll be the next project. But yeah, pretty happy.